A man rented an extremely cheap apartment to save money. The reason it was so cheap was because the previous tenant had ended their life there. The agent warned him that living in this place might cause some physical discomfort, but the man didn't care. After all, nothing was scarier than being poor. On the third night after moving in, he was lost in a pleasant dream, unaware that a female ghost was gently caressing him. When the ghost bit his neck, he instantly woke up, thinking it was just a nightmare. But when he touched his neck, he found traces of blood. He rushed to the mirror and realized, to his horror, that he had truly been bitten. Through the reflection in the glass, he suddenly saw the ghost standing right there in his room. The man's name was Yahiro. He used to work at a factory, but just as he was about to be promoted to manager, he suddenly resigned. Ever since childhood, he had dreamed of becoming an actor, and while he was still young, he wanted to take one last shot at chasing that dream. Yamanaka, his boss, laughed at his ambition, telling him to keep his feet on the ground, make some money, get married, and live a stable life. But Yahiro had already made up his mind. Seeing his determination, Yamanaka stopped trying to persuade him. It turned out that Yamanaka himself had once tried to be an actor, but failed to hold on. He took out a business card and handed it to Yahiro, recommending him to a film production company. Yahiro held the card with tears in his eyes. To him, it wasn't just a piece of paper. It was an unfinished dream and a new beginning. He bowed deeply to Yamanaka to thank him for all his help over the years. Soon, Yahiro followed the business card to Fujiyoshi's company, but he found that the place was in terrible condition and looked nothing like a film production company. But that didn't bother him. As long as he could act, any hardship was worth it. Fujiyoshi thought Yahiro's appearance was decent and that he might make a good actor, so he suggested Yahiro rent a haunted apartment and shoot a paranormal video. That way, his chances of going viral would be much higher. Following Fujiyoshi's advice, Yahiro rented a haunted apartment through a real estate agent, which led to the scene we saw at the beginning. The next morning, despite what had happened the night before, Yahiro didn't leave. He calmly enjoyed his breakfast as if nothing had happened. Just then, Fujiyoshi sent him a message inviting him to be an extra on set. Even though it was a tiny, insignificant role, Yahiro was thrilled. It proved to be a good start. Soon he arrived at the film set and was paired with another extra named Karin to play a couple. Karin's sweet and adorable appearance immediately captivated Yahiro, and even after the filming ended, he still couldn't forget her. He regretted not asking for her contact information. At that moment, Fujiyoshi suddenly appeared beside him, saying they should celebrate Yahiro's first acting job. However, when they arrived at the nightclub, Yahiro followed right behind Fujiyoshi, but the moment he stepped inside, Fujiyoshi's figure suddenly vanished. It was Yahiro's first time in such a place and he stood there, not knowing what to do. Thankfully, the friendly female owner noticed him and came over. She pulled him to a seat and kindly called over a hostess to keep him company. To their surprise, when they saw each other, both were shocked. The hostess was none other than Karin, his co-star from earlier that day. They began to chat and Karin explained that being an extra didn't pay much, so she had no choice but to work there part-time. After that night, they gradually became close. One day, Karin came to Yahiro's apartment to help him improve his acting skills. Suddenly, she received a strange phone call. The person on the other end shouted angrily at her, telling her to get out of Yahiro's house immediately. Karin felt a mix of confusion and embarrassment. She assumed the caller was Yahiro's girlfriend and didn't want to cause trouble. Too embarrassed to explain, she quickly got up and left, leaving Yahiro standing there, confused and puzzled. The next day, Yahiro went to audition for a horror movie. One of the judges, Kumuro, was a psychic researcher. The moment she saw Yahiro, she had a bad feeling. Then, the cameraman gasped. The camera had captured a hand slowly appearing on Yahiro's shoulder. The next second, his phone suddenly froze. Kumuro's eyes grew firm. She was convinced that Yahiro was haunted by something unclean. After the audition, she took out her business card and handed it to him, warning him that if anything supernatural happened, he must call her immediately. Yahiro didn't understand what she meant, but didn't think much of it. That night, as he was about to sleep, the doorbell suddenly rang. When he checked the camera, there was no one outside. He thought it was just a prank, so he got ready to go back to sleep. But the bell rang again. His heart raced in fear, but soon he calmed down and drifted off to sleep. Then, The ghost came again. In his dream, Yahiro felt something strangling his neck, making it hard to breathe. The camera captured a dark figure moving toward him, and Yahiro's body twisted in agony. He even started rubbing his head against the wall over and over again. The next day, Yahiro showed the video to Karin. After watching it, she advised him to move out of the haunted apartment as soon as possible, fearing that something even worse might happen. But Yahiro believed this was his chance to become famous, a gift from fate, and he didn't want to miss it. Seeing how determined he was, Karin had no choice but to give up persuading him. She was about to say something more when suddenly, a hand slowly reached out from Yahiro's shoulder. Yahiro froze in confusion, not understanding why Karin looked so terrified. He walked to the mirror to take a closer look. There, he discovered a hidden compartment behind the mirror. Inside it was a box wrapped in cloth. Startled, Yahiro immediately contacted Komuro to come and take a look. With one glance, she realized the box had been cursed. When she opened it, she found a human eye inside. Komuro explained that the curse would harm anyone living in the apartment, and that the entire room was filled with dark energy. She strongly advised Yahiro to move out immediately, otherwise he might be the next to die. This time, truly sensing danger to his life, Yahiro didn't dare to stay any longer. He quickly packed his things and fled the apartment. That night, with nowhere else to go, Yahiro spent the night at an internet cafe. Luckily, the video he had filmed in the haunted apartment had gone viral online and caught the attention of a media company. They invited him to appear on a live broadcast about paranormal phenomena. Hearing the news, Yahiro was overjoyed and accepted the offer without hesitation. He quickly shared the good news with Karin. But when Karin learned that Yahiro would be visiting another haunted location, her expression showed no joy at all. The next morning, Yahiro arrived at the filming site with the crew. The location was a famous haunted inn, the second haunted place he would be staying in. Soon, Yahiro began checking the filming area alone. But suddenly, loud footsteps echoed from upstairs, shaking the chandelier above him. The noise made it impossible for him to concentrate, so he decided to go upstairs and ask whoever it was to quiet down. But when he reached the second floor, he was horrified to see a little girl walking quickly toward a woman. The sight left him completely stunned, and he ran downstairs to tell the crew. However, the staff told him not to worry, saying there were other guests in the inn. Yahiro accepted the explanation and tried not to think too much about it. That night, while everyone was busy with final preparations, the director suddenly began hearing the voices of a mother and daughter through his headset. Before he could figure out what was happening, 8 o'clock arrived, and the live broadcast officially began. The host asked Yahiro to talk about what it felt like living in a haunted house. Yahiro, who had been laughing moments earlier, suddenly became serious.
ここにいるのは、ある女の子の霊、大病を患って療養に来てたんです。でも、病気は全然治らなくて、苦しんで、かわいそうで、かわいそすぎて、ある日ね、母親は、その女の子を窒息させたんです。
After hearing his words, the director and crew looked puzzled. None of this was in the script, but his realistic acting made this performance exceptionally outstanding. When Yahiro snapped back to himself, he seemed to have no memory of what he had just said.
いや、今の声。
確実に聞こえましたね。
今の何？
感じますよ。旅館に住む霊の声でしょ。
がぜんこの後楽しみになってきたね。
After the broadcast ended, everyone praised his performance, saying his improvisation was unbelievably lifelike. Though Yahiro couldn't remember much, he accepted the compliments without explaining further. When all the work was done and everyone packed up to leave, Yahiro volunteered to stay overnight at the inn. He wanted to use this opportunity to record more footage, hoping to attract more acting jobs. Later that night, as he tried to sleep, he again heard noises from upstairs. Driven by curiosity, he went to the second floor to investigate. After searching for a while, he found the source of the sound. When he slowly pushed open a door, he was shocked to see a mother suffocating her own daughter. Yahiro woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. The nightmare had felt too real to be dismissed. He went back to that same room, only to find that the door was now sealed shut with wooden planks, completely different from what he had seen before. Feeling sorry for the mother and daughter, Yahiro didn't know what else he could do, so he left some food at the door as a simple offering. Later, when he returned to Tokyo, he ran into Karin. Seeing that he was safe, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She told him she had landed a movie role and would be away for a while. Before parting, they shared their live locations on their phones so they could see each other's whereabouts anytime. Not long after, Yahiro went back to the rental office to find a new place. This time, the agent recommended a shared apartment, which, once again, was rumored to be haunted. According to previous tenants, strange things had happened there, and none of them had lasted long before moving out. But instead of being scared, Yahiro was thrilled. He had already built up a persona as the haunted houseman and swore to turn this unique identity into his new career path. The next day, Yahiro moved into his third haunted home. It was a shared house with several young men, and since they were about the same age, they quickly became friends. However, on the second night, Yahiro couldn't sleep. He suddenly heard the sound of an old woman crying through the wall, but the house rules strictly banned female tenants. Unable to rest, Yahiro went downstairs to ask his roommates, but they swore they had never brought any women home. The three of them then realized that something supernatural might be going on. Yahiro suggested they perform a spirit summoning ritual to find out why the ghost was there. The other two, curious and excited, quickly agreed. Yahiro set up a camera and brought out a spirit board. He planned to record the entire ritual and upload it online. It would definitely get views. Once they lit the candles, the ritual began. The three placed their fingers on a coin resting on the board, and Yahiro asked the first question.
あなたは男性ですか?
A moment later, the coin slowly slid toward the woman's face on the board. Yahiro then continued with the second question.
あなたはいくつですか?
At that moment, Koyama suddenly noticed blood on Kumei's face. When Kumei looked up at the ceiling, streams of blood began dripping from the cracks above, and his face instantly felt burning hot. When they turned on the light, they were horrified to see Kumei's entire face covered in blood. But just a second ago, he had been terrified, and now, for some reason, he suddenly started laughing uncontrollably, acting like he had gone mad. Yahiro quickly showed the video to Komuro. With her experience, she immediately recognized that Kumei had been possessed by a spirit, though she couldn't tell who it was. That night, Yahiro saw Kumei standing on the roof, staring blankly into the distance. Fearing he might do something foolish, Yahiro shouted his name, trying to wake him up. But just as he finished calling, an old woman suddenly appeared out of nowhere and jumped onto Kumei's back. Caught completely off guard, Kumei lost his balance and fell headfirst to the ground. Just like that, Kumei passed away. Later, Yahiro learned that the old woman had once been a tenant in the same house. She had ended her life there after a series of personal troubles. Her spirit never left and began tormenting everyone who moved in afterward. Since then, the house had become one of the most feared haunted residences in the area. After this tragedy, Yahiro completely lost his confidence in filming supernatural videos. If he hadn't moved in and shared the apartment, maybe Kumei would still be alive. He felt that Kumei's death was partly his fault. Sometime later, Yahiro met up with Karin. He confessed that he had stopped staying in haunted houses, but since he hadn't found a real job yet, he was temporarily living at an internet cafe. He sighed and said the entertainment industry was too difficult, and maybe he just wasn't cut out for it. Seeing how lost he looked, Karin felt sorry for him and invited him to stay at her place for a while. Faced with her kind offer, Yahiro couldn't refuse, so he packed up his things and moved into Karin's home. As he looked around the cozy and tidy house, he finally understood what it felt like to have a real home. But that night, Yahiro couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He had no idea that this was actually the fourth haunted place he had moved into. In the middle of the night, Yahiro heard soft sobbing. When he opened the door, he couldn't see anyone, but the crying continued right beside his ear. Following the sound, he eventually found Karin hiding inside the closet, but she resisted his attempts to comfort her as if she were a completely different person. The next morning, Karin acted like nothing had happened, smiling as she prepared breakfast, showing no memory of the night before. Yahiro told Komuro about it, suspecting that he might have brought a spirit into Karin's house. But Komuro told him not to blame everything on ghosts and urged him instead to pay attention to Karin's behavior. That night, while Yahiro was sleeping, he suddenly realized he couldn't move his body. Strange memories that weren't his began flashing through his mind. He struggled to turn his head and was terrified to see a dark figure leaning over him, silently staring down. Moments later, his body was free again, but he couldn't tell who or what it was that he saw. The next morning, he received a call from his mother asking him to return to the countryside for a visit. Before leaving, he planned to say goodbye to Fujiyoshi. But when he tried to call Fujiyoshi, the number was no longer in service, so Yahiro decided to go to the company in person to bid farewell properly. When he arrived, he was surprised to find the building locked up. Just then, the owner of the neighboring business happened to pass by and told Yahiro that the film company had shut down years ago and the place had been abandoned ever since. Yahiro was stunned. He immediately called Yamanaka, the man who had given him Fujiyoshi's contact, but Yamanaka swore he had never heard of anyone by that name. Yahiro quickly pulled out the business card and noticed something strange. The name printed on it was Motoyama. A chill ran down his spine as he realized that the person he had been dealing with might not have been human at all. When he returned to Karin's house, he was still thinking about Fujiyoshi. A moment later, Karin came home drenched from the rain, looking pale and distracted. Before Yahiro could speak, she told him the truth. Her real name wasn't Karin. She had changed it because her father was a murderer, and his name was Fujiyoshi. Years ago, after her parents divorced, her mother tried to take custody of her with her new husband. Fujiyoshi opposed it. And in a moment of rage, he accidentally killed the man. He was imprisoned afterward. As a child, Karin had refused to live with her mother and chose to grow up in an orphanage instead. But when Fujiyoshi was finally released from prison, she couldn't bring herself to reunite with him. The gossip and judgment surrounding her father had trapped her in a web of shame. People called her the daughter of a killer, and the constant whispers and stares made her too afraid to face him. Hearing her story, Yahiro gently comforted her and took the chance to confess his feelings. Karin was surprised. Everyone else had avoided her once they learned about her father, but Yahiro didn't judge her, which finally lifted the burden in her heart. The next day, they planned to go out together, but as soon as Karin stepped outside, the door suddenly slammed shut, locking Yahiro inside. At that moment, something strange took over Karin, as if an invisible force had possessed her. She ran wildly down the street. Yahiro broke the door open with a chair and chased after her, but she had already disappeared. Thankfully, they had shared their live locations earlier. Following the signal, Yahiro tracked her to an old abandoned building. Inside, he finally found Karin. It was the same place where she and her father had once lived together, and lying before them was a decayed corpse. Yahiro recognized the body. It was Fujiyoshi. Seeing her father's remains, Karin was overwhelmed with regret for not reaching out to him sooner. Yahiro slowly understood everything. From the moment he received the business card, his fate had already been guided by Fujiyoshi. It was Fujiyoshi who had led him to Tokyo, who had made him the haunted houseman, who had arranged his encounter with Karin, and who had ultimately drawn him to his own body. In the end, Yahiro and Karin held a funeral for Fujiyoshi. They also grew even closer, deciding to stay by each other's side from then on. Yahiro finally found his purpose. He would continue exploring haunted places, dedicating himself to this unique path that fate had chosen for him. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.